Okay. Thanks very much, Elena, for that introduction and idea for inviting me. I actually missed this group because I was actually a very active member of the development education group in the last 8 years. So the last few months has been, I actually miss you guys, so you are doing a great job.
We miss you too, Mama.
So my deliberation today is going to be based on migration and development. So I'm trying to make a link and the role of the development education sector in that. First of all, I'm going to give you a historical aspect of migration, the link between migration and development, and also the challenges of migration for the development education sector, and then also the role of the development education sector in migration discourse and how they can include the diaspora in that, because I think it's a point that is missing a lot. So, but first of all, I'll give you a snapshot of what has been said on migration and development. During his speech in July 2013 at the United Nations informal hearing on international migration and development, Jibril Fall told the world that it was Canadian-American John Kenneth Gilbert who told us that migration is the oldest action against poverty. It is good for the country to which migrants go. It helps break the equilibrium of poverty in the countries where migrants are coming from. But the question that he posed was that, why is it that everyone is against or resistant to migration? And for me, I think there are two reasons why people migrate. First of all, for protection and to have a better quality of life. Who doesn't want that? We all do want something like that. So I think it's very important for IDEA to choose this topic, especially what is happening in the world today. But historically, about 150,000 years ago, probably it could be more than that, all our ancestors were Africans. So we started from there. And here today, we only talk about a small minority of people who are migrants. I always say this to people. I think it all depends on the time duration, where we have been or where we have actually moved. But we are all migrants in some way or the other. So I think if we started from there, probably we would understand what people are going through as well. And I think in this room here as well, a good number of us has moved around as well to other countries. And now we are based here doing development education. So we have gone through a lot that has been said here by the first speaker, by Salome. Probably we had all these stories and we might actually go through them as well. So historically, I think we probably know what is happening in terms of migration, but how we actually translate that as development education is something that we need to look into. The link between migration and development. Remittance are among the most tangible links between migration and development. International migrants remit more than 550 billion in earnings, that's in 2013 alone, and of which 414 billion went to the developing countries. This has increased recognition during the last decades that migration can be a factor in the promotion of international development. Migrants typically do not cut ties with their countries of origin, and their interaction with the host back home, their household back home and the home community is a main challenge by which migration could benefit development. There can be an important challenge of money and knowledge and ideas between host and home countries through migrants. Recently, there has been evidence of the contribution of the African diaspora to their countries of origin. It is estimated that 30 billion individuals of the African diaspora live outside their home countries, and they contribute over 40 billion in remittances to their families and communities back home every year. And this is by IFAD in 2014. So you can see that actually this is even more than the overseas aid development. So why are we not interested in migration and the contribution by migrants? However, migration creates brain drain, but migration also creates brain gain as well. Because like some of us here, the reason why we are actually speaking here, because we migrated from our countries to come here. So it's a gain. Not only that, but also like migrants going back, I think they are contributing a lot. Recently, especially with the African diaspora contribution into their respective countries. So migration has a greater part in terms of overall development. While migration impact economic development, conditions are important drivers of migration. People migrate for a variety of reasons, including the search for better economic opportunity, as I mentioned before. Education, family reunion, and escaping violence, as Salome has mentioned already. People often migrate for a combination of these and other reasons. However, the expected income gap between developed and developing countries is a strong incentive for people to migrate. And as such, migrants affect development, but development also affects migration as well. So the challenges of migration for the development education sector, I know Frank actually mentioned about some of the things, the good things that you guys are doing, but I think there's still a bit of lacking few things in terms of the role of the, okay, I have 5 minutes. The role of the development education sector. The Irish development education sector lacked thorough understanding of migration, to my understanding. Even though most of us development educators have been migrants in one way or the other, migration hasn't been coming very clearly in our activities and approaches. There is very limited link between migration and development in development practice in Ireland. Like you can actually go to other European countries, especially in terms of their overseas development or even in development education sector. There's a very fine defined line between migration and development. But in Ireland here, I think it's actually missing in our discourse. And I think we are not asking the questions, why are people moving? And also, we are not asking the question, are they being forced to move? Are they moving because of family ties? And without answering these questions, we are creating more confusion in classrooms, in communities, and within our families as well, and peers. Because we are development educators, so we should be ready to have answers for this to actually explain clearly. A very few development educators are making the link between migration and issues of the asylum system, racism, Islamophobia, and other social forms of injustice associated with migrants. Because of the reason why people move, all these effects are, they have all these effects as well. But we are not actually discussing them. Yes, it is true, we need to explore the reasons why people move and associate factors to the movement. The lack of migrants in the development education sector is a big problem in Ireland. We look around, there's only a few people. So, and I think that's something that we need to actually look into. There is no visibility of migrants in the sector. Here, I'm not talking about development education for migrants. So you can do a lot of activities for migrants, but I think we need to actually get migrants involved. And the migrants being practitioners, not all as volunteers, but as paid staff as well. And I think also the lack of limited development education funding, I hope somebody in Irish states are here to listen to this, because I think that's one of the key factors also. That's why people are not involved in development education. Migrant-led organizations lack funding. I have 2 minutes, so probably I'm going to send this thing because it's a lot.
No, but 3 actually. Okay,
3. Migrant-led organizations lack funding in terms of development education work. And I think the mainstream educators, instead of migrants speaking for themselves, we tend to speak for migrants. And I think that's one thing that we have to really look into. The main funder of development education in Ireland, Irish Aid, is not adequately funding migrant-led organizations to do adequate development education, which is also a challenge for the DE sector. And I don't think it's not only Irish Aid, but it's for the whole DE sector. Without migrants involved in development education and actually narrate their own stories, it's actually very problematic to development education. Development education missing some of the core values of linking local to global. Ireland has issues with undocumented migrants, especially in the United States. And maybe this is a campaign that goes on all the time, especially with our government. We go to the United States, we want to regularize undocumented migrants. But yet still in Ireland, we cannot talk about undocumented migrants here, which is, I think, the development education sector can actually do something better in that. And I still believe that development education sector in Ireland is not radical enough. The history of development education in Ireland is very radical. But now we lost that because like activism, advocacy, campaign are some of the words that you can't use. It's like they slap your wrist if you say those things, which we need to go back as well. The role of the development education sector in migration discourse and how they can include the diaspora I mentioned it earlier, but I think development education needs to understand what identity means, multiple identities, and the complexity of identity, especially looking at the demographic nature of Ireland today. And without having the diaspora involved in it, I think that would be very difficult. So we need to actually claim the original root of radicalism in development education. There should be a space for intercultural dialogue in development education. So many discussion has been done on that by Vanessa, through IDEA, but I think those things are missing because there is no intercultural dialogue. The way forward, development educators need to engage in looking at the link between migration and development. Not only looking at the remittance side of this, the monetary values, but we need to actually make a link in one way or the other and see how migrants actually contribute to the discourse. Development educators and Irish Aid need an objective understanding of the role of migrants and diaspora in development, followed by a semi-emotional acceptance of the virtue of diaspora development before they can wholeheartedly support diaspora entities. Making migration and development as a core development discourse and engage migrants and diaspora in that discussion will help development educators to know what to do, but also what not to do as well. Because we are talking about the media. I know we have a code of conduct, the first speaker mentioned about it, but we need to actually engage in that discussion and get the diaspora involved to actually know what we can campaign and what we can say. I invited the development education sector to reflect on some of these points. Probably if I have a minute, I can just...
A minute.
A minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Do work with migrants on thematic and sectoral issues. Do not assume that migrants, especially diaspora, have general expertise in development education. They don't. So you need to actually work with them. Do accommodate plurality among migrants and diaspora. Do not insist on a single voice for a diverse constituency. Do incorporate capacity building in all forms of engagement. Do not exclude migrants by virtue of entrenched incapacity. We should be confident enough to go into asylum centers or engage asylum seekers, even though our government policy is to isolate them. Do create customized migrant and diaspora support packages, because not everyone is coming from that development education background, but do not shoehorn groups into inappropriate standardized models. Do seek out and foster dynamism and innovation in the development education sector. Do not nurse and institutionalize the mediocrity unevenness. And do support the growth and expansion of migrant diaspora programs. Do not condemn migrant groups to micro projects. On a final note, could intercultural dialogue be regarded as a space for sharing values and meaning of migration and development, and therefore move beyond nation states towards global citizenship? Intercultural learning in the frame of development education opens up perspective and points to the world outside our own, like for example the EU. Draw attention to global interdependencies, emphasis relationship, linking various factors such as climate change and its impact on the environment, war, refugees, the constituent evolution of social inclusion and violence of human rights, as Salome mentioned. Development education can be successful in many ways, in particular in making us aware that global poverty is not a distant problem. It's actually within us. Development education, they very reveal stories that are literally inscribed in our lives when we work with people who are different to us. Example, refugees, asylum seekers, homeless, undocumented migrants. Human library. Instead of borrowing books, people can borrow people to talk. They are the so-called human books. It is a very easy and simple method that can be practiced everywhere, in clubs, cafeterias. Let's try and do. We have the resources. We have people around. Let's actually make the best use of that. Thank you very much.